to start with an actor you've seen in Friday Night Lights and American Soul. Please welcome Sinqua Walls. Please join in welcoming the film's writer and director. Her short films include Suicide by Sunlight and Flowers. Believe it or not, Nanny is her feature film directorial debut. Please welcome Nikyatu Jusu. Congratulations.
I'm gonna try not to fall on my own outfit.
Worth it though. How stunning is this? Yeah, someone with taste. Whenever I have people as accomplished as either of you, I actually love to go back to the beginning and ask, what was sort of your first job in this business? The first time, you realized you were a filmmaker, or you felt you could call yourself an actor. Sometimes that's the first time you got paid for it, or sometimes it's just the moment you knew that you were stuck with this for life.
Oh.
I'm gonna let Sinqua answer that first.
It's funny because I wish some of my friends were also in the room right now, because they know that for years on the journey of pursuing an acting career, I was like, I'm not an actor until I have a billboard on Sunset. I was like, I'm not an actor until I have a billboard on Sunset, because I was like, I can't go home and tell my mom, like, as much as I was making money off it, I was like, I can't say I was in the KFC commercial. I need a billboard for my mom to be proud of me. And then years ago, I was cast in this movie called Shark Night 3D.
Yes.
David R. Ellis directed it, and that was my first billboard. It wasn't even me. It just said Shark Night 3D, and it was like a shark's mouth. And I was like, Mom, I made it. It's all good now.
For you?
A lot less funny. Teaching was my way in to making a living in a way that felt like I was still informing my craft as a filmmaker. So I went straight from undergrad to grad school at NYU, and I was teaching all over the city. I was teaching filmmaking with different nonprofits, including Tribeca Film Institute, to middle schoolers in Washington Heights and Uzbek students in Bensonhurst. It was ridiculous what I was doing, but I was exposed to so many different types of youth, and I had to hold myself accountable as a filmmaker who was teaching filmmaking. I had to believe what I was teaching my filmmaking students. So if I tell you about structure and you're breaking structure, I need to know what you're breaking, or I need to teach you how to master the language so you can break the language. So it held me accountable as an artist, as a teacher.
Cool. Well, again, congratulations on Nanny. I'm going to keep saying this because I still can't believe it's your feature film.
Thank you. I can't either.
Directorial debut.
To be honest.
I've seen Suicide by Sunlight, which is brilliant, and just so people have some context, it's about a vampire, but also one trying to get custody of their children. And I love the way that you mix horror and social issues, very real social issues. What interested you in telling, an immigrant story, amongst so many other things, but through the lens of the horror genre?
I'm first-gen American. My family's from Sierra Leone, West Africa. I was born and raised in Atlanta, Georgia. So I had a really eclectic upbringing of Sierra Leone, which people literally around the world don't know what that is or where it is. I've traveled a lot, and I'm like, my family's from Sierra Leone. I'll be in Qatar and say that. And they're like, where, your family's from what? So it's not just an American thing. But growing up in America, in the South, with a West African household is really eclectic. So I was always in this liminal in-between space. So I gravitated to filmmakers who were cross-genre, like Park Chan-wook. I traveled the world through cinema. Park Chan-wook, Lynn Ramsey, Andrea Arnold, Casey Lemons is American, but all of these filmmakers are very cross-genre. And their films are essentially, if you whittled them down to 5 genres within one film. But it was a learning curve for me to realize, even though I was very American, very African simultaneously, I had to figure out what genre I wanted to navigate. And I think horror allows you to tell truths in a way that is more palatable for mainstream audiences, that doesn't feel pedantic, that doesn't feel preachy. And I usually use air quotes for those words because it depends on the audience, whether it feels preachy or pedantic. But horror allows you to be honest and allows the audience to be brave in ways that I think are really profound. So I also, as a filmmaker, love to play with all the tools. So horror allows you to play with soundscape and really be stylized in every facet of production in a way that keeps me stimulated as an artist.
And I believe I read somewhere that this is an idea you've sort of been, I don't know if you've been working on it actively or like mulling it over for like 8 or 9 years.
Yeah, not consecutively. 8-ish years, I always say on and off, because as a filmmaker, as a rising filmmaker in these times, it's smart, as a writer-director, if I'm being honest, part of the reason I'm hireable in these times is because I can write and direct, truly. And so it behooves you to have multiple projects in different stages, whether you're outlining a project or you're revising a draft of a feature script or you're conceptualizing a short film that is proof of concept that speaks to a larger world. So for those 8-ish years, I was investing in other projects and coming back to Nanny because I thought that Nanny was too specific, too singular, too unique, that we wouldn't find the financing. So I allowed the voices to get in my head, but ultimately, chipping away at all of these projects, it benefited me as an artist, because one of them is the Suicide by Sunlight short film that is being expanded now with Monkey Paw as a feature.
Oh my God!
Yeah, so it does help to stack, but it takes a unique, I won't say mind, but it takes a unique person to be able to stack multiple projects simultaneously. So that's why it took so long for Nanny, because I overthought it and I revisited other projects.
And then strangely, it comes together during the pandemic, which is when other people are having trouble getting movies made.
I don't think strangely. As an overthinker, I've had a lot of time to analyze why now. And I think part of the reason is that the industry, we all slowed down during the pandemic, multiple pandemics that we're navigating, but we all were forced to come to a halt in a way and think about the trajectory of our lives and think about these systems that we're navigating mindlessly to survive. And I think the industry had to take inventory of talent that it previously ignored, had the luxury to ignore. So, I'm reading interviews and publications where it makes it seem like I came out of nowhere with all this stuff. And it's like, nah, y'all, I sacrificed some pivotal years for some of this. And it's no coincidence that the industry has been forced to take inventory of new voices in these times.
That's great. Sinqua, I'm so curious for you. How did you first become aware of this project, and what interested you, not only specifically in your role, but the project overall?
Listen, first I'm going to say that I feel like everybody in this room, I was like so enamored with what she was saying. I was just sitting there like, wait, right.
Sorry to make you fall.
That's why I was like, whoa, right. What was the question?
I forgot. Just sort of how you became aware of the project and what interested you.
Naturally, very organically for me, like what starts with many actors is a conversation and a call from your agent. My agent called me and was like, here's this script that I think you should read, and I think it's in line with what, the next steps are for you, and also I think you'll love it. And coincidentally, my agent had been very, very familiar with Nikyatu for a long time. She appreciated her as an artist for a long time, and I didn't even realize that until we had a deeper conversation about the script. So I read it, and then when I had an opportunity to read it, I, off the page, was like, wow. I always say if I read something and I can see myself in it, but even if I'm not casting it, I'll still watch it. Then I know it's something that is pivotal to me and I want to do. And so then the next step was having a conversation with Nikyatu about it and trying to figure out a way to convince this woman to cast me. And like I always say, she held her decisions close to her chest. She held her cards close to her chest, and we had a great conversation. We had a great call, and I remember my agent was like, "How did it go?" I said, "Good, I think, but I think there's more steps to go," and there were, and it took time.
Seeing the sign language artist
I know,
stress
it's so
that part.
beautiful. Yeah.
And there were
more steps. But yeah, and then we went through the process of chemistry with me and Anna, and it was we connected even on a Zoom call again during the pandemic, so it was all virtual. Every meeting was virtual, every read was virtual, and to find that through virtual chemistry was obviously the challenge, but we were able to find it, and Nikyatu felt, confident enough about what I was doing, and that's how it all kind of came together.
I was curious about that because your chemistry is so essential to this movie, and I didn't know if it was possible to even meet beforehand or how that developed, but it sounds like it was there even in those boxes.
Yeah, well, that's the testament to the filmmaker, because she saw something in both of us that she knew was a connection, and it was organic. I think a little cheat if there's other actors in the room. Never do Zoom on your computer because it'll always jump back and forth between the person. Do Zoom on your iPad because you can lock the screen and you can only see the one person. So when I was doing the Zoom between me and Anna, I can only see Anna. I can't see anyone else. So it gave me an ability to have a little bit more connection than to have that jump, and then I see, maybe someone's reaction or sound or whatever. I can just see her face. And that made it a little bit easier.
Yeah.
And then the second meeting that we had after we were cast was another Zoom call where we just talked about life. And I think we didn't even get a chance to actually go to dinner and talk more until we were in production.
Wow.
And then I think that was like when we actually sat down. But before that, we'd had multiple calls together and looking at each other's face and just kind of talking about our relationship and story.
We, of course, have to talk about Anna. She's phenomenal. I don't know if you're familiar with any of her work or where you found her.
I'm not familiar with her previous work. She started life on Nanny. I shouldn't joke like that. Somebody's gonna run with that.
Can you tell us about the casting process? Because you're asking a lot of these actors.
Honestly, so as someone who values authenticity, I was lucky in the sense that my financiers were very open to my process. Like, they believed in me. They didn't hire, a lot of people in this industry will hire you for your original voice and only to dilute that voice or diminish that light, and so our financiers saw my voice, heard my voice, saw my light, and wanted to enhance it. And so they heard me when I said authenticity, but of course they had their names. The A-list system rings bells, it brings in money. It's a little bit easier to market in the marketing and distribution chapter of the process. So it makes everyone's life easier when you have a recognizable, quote unquote, cast. But how do they become recognizable if they're not given the work? And so going to NYU grad film, I will say one of the benefits was, besides learning every facet of filmmaking, is that you really become confident in your ability to cast authentically. Whether it's street casting or you're mixing non-actors with professional actors, like just really finding that balance of authenticity is the most important thing to me. But I knew I had to convince my financiers about this lead, this woman who's in every single scene for the first time in her career. And so, as Sinqua alluded to, Anna was down for the process. There were some teams who were offer only, they said to me, in my team. And I'm like, I know I'm a nobody, but I need to see what I'm signing up for. Can you do a West African accent? And West Africa's vast. Can you do a Senegalese accent, a Nigerian accent? Like, what can you do that feels convincing? Because as a first gen, I'm not going to embarrass myself and have bad accents. There are enough films that do that for me. So Anna went through the process. She's in Titans, which haven't seen a single episode, but knew it was good for my cause because it's a mainstream thing that people respect mainstream things, whether they're good or bad, whether they're well lit or not, whether the wig department knows what they're doing or not. So I can keep going. I can keep going. But the best Anna has looked has been in Nanny. But I knew that her being in that mainstream thing helped my cause. So her killing her audition and being willing to go through the process was just icing on the cake. There were other actresses who were compelling as well, who I'm still curious about. And I think my job as a filmmaker is to introduce audiences to underutilized faces and actors. So she's one of the people that I'm excited to continue working with for the rest of my career.
Right. Hopefully not underutilized for long.
Yeah, I don't. Well, she's already on to her next couple of projects. So yeah.
I love how this film, it draws on West African mythology while also speaking to, the very real realities of caregiving and how you weave those together so effortlessly. How did you strike that balance? Did you know? I mean, I imagine it was in the script, but then even when you get into the editing room, you're still tinkering and finding it.
I have so much reverence for the editing process. And I'm lucky, on one hand, lucky enough, and on the other hand, cursed enough to have written and directed this. I'm so close to the material that sometimes it felt like a curse. But one thing that NYU teaches us is to have a brain for every department head. So whether it's production design or it's editing or it's cinematography, you learn the jargon, at least in film school for a little bit, in terms of how to navigate these different departments. And so I write and I direct with an editor's, with editing in mind. I'm not gonna say that I'm an editor, but I think about films in the ways that editors do. So I have a lot of reverence for the ways that you carve out the story in that part of the process. And because of that, there's a film you conceive of, there's a film that you write, there's a film that you shoot, there's a film that you edit. Those are 4 different films. And the most adept filmmakers understand that you have to lean into what you have in front of you at each chapter of the process. And so in the editing room, it was like, regardless of what I wrote, this is what we have. And how am I staying with my protagonist? And I will say to this room, one thing about whiteness and working with white department heads for a lot of this part of the process, because these are the people who are vetted. These are the people who have been given the opportunity to fail intelligently and build the body of work that allows them to be approved. And so editing was the one department where I didn't feel 100% amazing about this choice. But this was someone who was vetted, quote unquote, and the financiers believed in him. But his gaze was so cemented in whiteness that I had to remind him who the protagonist was. And in every editing session, like, why are we lingering on these reaction shots from the white supporting cast when our protagonist is Aisha? Yes. So if you don't know what you're doing, it can be really intimidating. If you don't have a strong center as a storyteller, it can be really disheartening because you're not sure if you're cemented in a center that makes sense to the world. And so I have to remind the editor who the protagonist is, just reminds me that it needed to take this long for me to get here, because I needed to solidify my center so that I could defend my choices intelligently. So if it does take a little longer for some of you and for some of us, just know that it's for a reason. You need to solidify who you are, because this industry will shake your center or attempt to daily. And so maybe I have a couple more films left, but I can't keep reminding people who the protagonists are in my world.
Yeah.
You know, at every step of the process. It's exhausting.
I mean, I am a big believer in things happen when they happen for a reason. And I don't know if, 5 years ago you would have been comfortable, telling your editor what to do, the obvious things to do.
Yeah.
I am curious because I actually want to ask Sinqua, this is,
I know.
He's like, come on.
I was like, I'm so enthralled. I'm like, Miss Nikyatu, tell me. I'm learning.
No, he's ready to talk as well.
No, we have so many actors here, and this movie has a lot of things. There are times where it's funny, it's so real, but there's a lot of challenging material. Are you the kind of actor who can sort of leave that behind at the end of the day, or do you go home at night? Do you ever take your character with you? What was the biggest challenge in playing him?
I think, like you said, there's a lot of actors in the room. I think it's all about process, right? I think there's a process of preparation. I think there's a process of ingestion. I think there's a process of exiting it as well. And I've developed a good process of knowing when it's time to turn it off. And whatever that is for the evening of decompression. So for me, I always speak a lot about mental health, and people know I'm always trying to be an advocate for that. And one of the processes of my mental health when it comes to this craft and this art that I continue to pursue is how to turn it off at the end of the evening. So I'll meditate, or I'll sit and just kind of like, allow myself to just have a moment to just let it purge from me. Not let it completely leave me, because I probably will need it the next day.
Yeah.
But enough, right? Because that's the process. You have to come back and deliver that. But enough to where it's at a comfortable, soothing space in my nervous system, so it doesn't translate into my home life, right? And then we all have a journey that we take on as artists, but the people that choose to go on the journey with us don't have to be afflicted by that, right? They don't have to carry that because you're like, I'm in the process of this. Specifically as actors, your rehearsal process is so intricate. And it's like, well, whoever is your partner or whoever is your family, they don't need to carry that burden. They just need to be there to support you. So what do you need to do in your work and in your process to let that go? And I've just developed a good process over the years so that I can be healthy for myself, and also healthy to the people around me that have chosen to love me on this journey. Yeah.
Can you give us a little insight so we can all be healthier?
Oh, sure.
I'm like, tell me the secrets.
I want to know too. I know some parts, but
right. The one that I think collectively is I try to modulate my electronic ingestion, right? And so I've learned this from so many different high-level business people that I've read and studied, and so one of the biggest things is I will shut down electronic interaction in the evening to allow my mind to be free. Right, I won't go on Instagram or Twitter or and I modulate, let my friends know, like, hey, I just got off work, give me about an hour just to kind of sit with myself for a second so that I can be free to just let that thing happen. So that's one, and it's never a huge electronic interaction. And meditation is big for me.
I was wondering if you're going to say
I am a huge meditator. Yes. I mean, I literally meditate every morning, and then I meditate every evening. And I always, when I'm talking to people, I'm like, I don't know what your spiritual background or compass is. And, when people share things with you and they're authentic, and you say, like, how are you? And they'll go, oh, I'm this. And they may tell you a story that you hadn't expected that's pivotal in their lives or detrimental in their lives. I'll say, I'm going to put that up in meditation for you. Right? And not to say, I'm going to pray for you, whatever. I'm not going to project that on anyone else, because everyone's come to spirituality is different. But for me, it's like, I'm going to let that hold a space for me to lift you up in a positive space, because it also is healthy for me to think beyond myself. And so meditation is probably my biggest tool, and I'm such an advocate for it now. Like, if anyone knows the people that Calm, they need to.
They're great.
Advocate for me, because I'm always talking to. I've bought the app for people. Headspace, like I'm meditating, and Calm is like my saving grace. I'll pop it on anytime. So that's my biggest tool, along with electronic, distance at times.
Selfishly, I can say that when I first casted Sinqua and tried to reach him on a Sunday to talk about character, because we were in prep and time was precious.
What did I say?
One, he ignored me. Two, he hit me up on Monday promptly between 9 to 5 and let me know that Sunday was his He's very clear about his boundaries. I will say that. I was pissed off. But, you know, it's important. You have to draw boundaries even with filmmakers like me.
You know, and anybody who knows me knows for the last, you know, I had the greatest gift. I had worked with someone, shall not be named, but I worked with this person and I saw the amount of time that they put into the work to the point of detriment to themselves and their family. And I made an agreement then. I said, I'll never put this business over my family.
Yeah.
And I said, I'll never, and I include myself in that process of family. And I'm like, you can only be given one day. And I had a friend of mine, and he had told me how he and his partner had been dating for a long time. And one day we'd always went out Friday and Saturday. And then I was like, Sunday, we're all gonna go to brunch, man. You wanna go? He was like, nah, man, Sunday is bay day. He was like, Sunday is a day from my partner, man. I don't talk to y'all on Sunday. It's bay day, I shut it down. And I was like, oh, well, I'm gonna adapt bay day. Well, I'm gonna adapt bay day into my life and curate it for what. And that's where the Sunday is always my day of rest, my day of meditation. And I really do tap in and just recharge the system because of the life that we all have to live. You know, it's not just being an artist, but we go out in the world and interact with so much. And so what do we need to do to recharge? So Monday is a fresh day. I take Sunday as the meditation day.
At the same time, when you're trying to reach an actor and they say, it's bay day, I'm sorry.
Someone who wants to work with me, don't do that. No, I'm joking. I respect that.
I caught her on the first one. So now it's going to be harder for everyone else.
I was so mad. I wasn't ready to recast this man.
Oh, no. But I was already locked in and I was already in New York. I was already there.
I do want to take a couple quick questions from the audience. If you have one, just raise your hand. There's one right there. Sure.
Hey, what's going on? Obi here. My question is, as a West African man myself.
Oh, from where?
From Nigeria.
Niger. We were just in Lagos.
Oh, really? How was it? How'd you like
Chaotic.
I guess my question is, why Senegal? Out of all the West African countries, not to throw any shade.
No shade at all.
This is an honest question because it's one of the countries. Like, I mean, Sierra Leone is very known. Nigeria.
Sierra Leoneans ask me the same question. They're like, "Why would you? Waiting do?" And I'm like, "Y'all, there are no mainstream." The thing with I'm stuttering because I'm about to tell the truth. The industry doesn't respect. Hollywood does not respect authenticity. Hollywood respects buzz and a name, quote unquote name. And so I knew, you know, that I needed someone. So I wrote the script loosely West African because I knew as the writer and director that casting would be contingent on someone who needed to be approved by the people who are putting in money. This is a business at the end of the day. And I'm constantly reminding myself that I don't want to allow capitalism to make me forget why I pursued this passion in the first place, or why I continue to be inspired to make films as hard as it is. But you will forget if you don't continue to remind yourself in this capitalistic system, because it's a business. And people need to see that they're investing in an actress or actor who has a resume like any other job. And so I knew casting a Sierra Leonean was a far stretch, which is why I wrote the script knowing that at least the region. As a Sierra Leonean, I paid homage to the West. Whether it was a Francophone country or an Anglophone country, I was open. And malleability is so important to being a director in these times. You have to be flexible. You have to be open to the capriciousness of humanity and who you cast and who they might be and what life they might breathe into the words that you wrote on the page.
Thank you very much. That was awesome.
One right here.
Thank you for sharing film with us. It was really beautiful.
Thank you.
I'm a USC MFA candidate in the development.
Oh, nice. Congrats.
Thank you. And you talked about being an editor and a writer with a writer and a director with an editor's eye.
Yeah.
When you were filming, did you get a lot of coverage, or did you shoot the film that you had in your head?
Very USC. Yeah. Of course, we got coverage. That's like the first thing you learn in film school. But I think what's more important than hosing things down for the edit is learning what you need in the edit and not wasting time, especially in COVID. The reality is we're now making films and TV in COVID, and as much as people are resistant to the changing landscape, it's changed. The pressure is even more to make the day. The time is even less. You're tested, you're behind a mask, things get muddled, communication gets muddled, everything has changed. So the pressure is even more exponential. So yeah, coverage is important, but more important than that is honing your editor's brain for your own stories and understanding exactly what you need for the edit. Because anybody can hose things down, but we don't have that luxury of time these days.
Cool, thank you.
There's actually a reception in the penthouse, so we can continue this conversation up there.
Don't come up to me. Drinks first. I'm joking.
Before we go, I want to remind everyone, this film premiered at Sundance earlier this year, where it won the Grand Jury Prize, the first horror film ever to do so. Only the second black person, I believe.
Second black person.
It's such a special movie. It's in theaters now before hitting Amazon. Please spread the word. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you.
Thank you.